So we're here in Oakland at the Cobb on Wood project, and this is a project that was done during the course of about 4 months.
At 5 in the morning under the Interstate 880 overpass in West Oakland, California, the fog rolls in off the estuary and everything metal goes cold to the touch. The chain link fencing, the shopping carts, the roofs of the cars parked along Wood Street. But tucked between the freeway pillars, there's a small round building the color of a clay flower pot, with a window made from a salvaged pane of glass. Inside it, a 63-year-old woman we'll call Delia is warm. Not buried under 6 blankets warm. Actually warm. The walls around her are more than a foot thick, made of mud and straw packed by hand by volunteers who had never built anything in their lives. Those walls cost about $500, and they were not built to be pretty. They were built because the thing killing people on that block was fire. So let's start with the material, because it takes 90 seconds to explain, and then we can get to why it mattered. The technique is called Cobb, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. You take subsoil, the heavy clay layer underneath the topsoil, and you mix it with sand, straw, and water. Traditionally, you mix it with your bare feet on a tarp, stomping and folding, until it turns into something between bread dough and wet concrete. Then you take handfuls and press them onto a wall, building upward a foot at a time, letting each layer stiffen before the next one goes on. Cobb walls curve because curves are stronger and because your hands naturally make curves. That's why every one of these buildings looks like it came out of a storybook. This isn't new. In Devon, in the west of England, there are cob cottages that have been lived in continuously for 400 and 500 years, original mud walls still holding up the roof. And here's the $500, itemized. The dirt was free, dug out of the ground under the freeway. The frames were shipping pallets, the kind stacked behind every warehouse in America, also free. The insulation packed into the pallet cavities was donated clothing that nobody wanted. So what the money actually bought was sand, straw, a roof, a salvaged window, and a hot water setup. The two most expensive ingredients in construction are materials and labor, and a homeless encampment has more dirt and more idle hands than anywhere else in the city. Now the part almost nobody covering the pretty gingerbread houses under the freeway bothered to write down. Wood Street was where Oakland's homeless population ended up when there was nowhere else. Police in other parts of the city had been telling evicted campers to go there for years. At its peak, the encampment stretched dozens of blocks and held around 300 people. One resident built a 2-story house. Another built a dwelling suspended inside an abandoned railroad trestle with a dumbwaiter to get up to it. And the daily danger there wasn't cold. Oakland doesn't really do cold. The danger was fire. Tents burn, tarps burn, pallet shacks burn like kindling. And when a propane bottle or a car battery or a space heater goes wrong at 2 in the morning, flames move faster than a sleeping person reacts. Wood Street saw more than 100 fires over a few years. There was no hydrant anywhere near it, so firefighters had to drag hoses hundreds of feet from the nearest water. In April of 2022, a fire there killed a resident. Now think about what a cob wall actually is. It's dirt. You can hold a blowtorch to an earthen wall and get a warm patch of dirt. That single physical fact is the argument underneath this entire project. Everything else, the sculpted trees, the paint, the storybook curves, is decoration on top of a fireproof box in a place that kept burning. So how did anyone get from that problem to a mud village? The origin is better than anything a nonprofit could have planned. A natural builder named Miguel Elliott, who goes by Meigs and runs a company called Living Earth Structures, showed up at the encampment with 25 years of Cobb experience and built a pizza oven. That's it. A dome of mud with a fire chamber inside. Then he threw a pizza party for whoever wanted one. Fresh pizza under a freeway for people who mostly ate out of donation bags and gas station coolers. People came over to see what the smell was. They stayed to help. And then they started asking whether that same mud could be turned into something bigger than an oven. 2 Oakland organizations picked it up. Essential Food and Medicine, co-founded by Xochitl Bernadette Moreno, had already been bringing food and healthcare into the camp. Artists Building Communities, founded by Anne-Marie Bustamante, had been building small shelters. Together, they went around Wood Street and asked residents a question that almost never gets asked in homeless services. What do you actually need? The answers were not complicated. A place to cook, a place to wash, a place to see a nurse, a place to get a coat that fits. Construction broke ground in December of 2020. Volunteers came out on weekends and stomped mud in the rain. By spring, the site had a full outdoor kitchen, a health clinic, a shower with hot water, a composting toilet, a free store stocked with donated clothes and books, a sleeping cabin, vegetable gardens, a bulletin board, a small stage, and the original pizza oven. Somebody sculpted trees into the sides of the buildings in relief. Somebody else painted them. A fundraiser brought in more than $22,000 from strangers on the internet. Television crews came out and called it a miracle village, which the residents mostly rolled their eyes at, because they were the ones hauling buckets. They called it Cobb on wood. So let's walk through a day inside it, and let's not sand the edges off. Delia's morning starts the way it does for everyone under a freeway, with the traffic overhead turning from a trickle to a roar around 6. But the sound is different behind earthen walls. Mud is heavy and dense, and it eats noise the way a library eats noise. Residents who moved out of tents said the first thing they noticed wasn't the warmth. It was the quiet. The second thing was the temperature. And this is the property that makes earth building work. It's called thermal mass. A thick wall of clay soaks up heat slowly all day and releases it slowly all night. So the inside of the building never swings the way the outside air swings. Foggy November night, still warm hours after sundown. Hot afternoon, still cool. A tent does the opposite in both directions, freezing before midnight and cooking by 9 in the morning. Then the day starts, and the day is water. If you've never lived without plumbing, it's hard to grasp how much of homelessness is just the logistics of water. Water to drink, water to cook, water to wash your one pair of pants, water to clean a cut before it becomes the infection that puts you in the emergency room. And every gallon at Wood Street arrived on foot or in a cart. Nobody was piping anything under that freeway. The hot shower, a small earthen stall with a real water setup, was the single most requested and most used thing on the entire site. People walked in from blocks away to use it. A hot shower isn't a luxury when you live outside. It decides whether you show up to a job interview. The buildings themselves also demand work, constantly. Cobb builders have a saying that a mud house needs a good hat and a good pair of boots, meaning a wide roof overhang and a raised foundation of stone or gravel. Rain running down an unprotected earthen wall will eventually eat it. Rain rising up from wet ground wicks into the base and turns it soft. And clay shrinks as it dries, so cracks open, and somebody has to mix a fresh batch and patch them. Nobody living in a Cobb structure gets to just live in it. You maintain it or you watch it go. Late morning, the kitchen fires up. Big pots, whatever came in from donations that week, cooked mostly by the people who live there rather than for them. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. A soup line makes you a recipient. A kitchen makes you a cook. Same calories, and a completely different walk back to your own door afterward. Sunday evenings, there was an open mic and a barbecue. Live music, a PA system, burgers on a grill, people from the camp and people from the surrounding neighborhood mixed together. And the residents had been holding their own weekly meetings before any volunteer ever showed up. So those meetings just kept going, with people speaking into the microphone about what the camp needed next. That's the piece nobody plans for when they design shelter. Loneliness out there kills slower than anything else, but it kills reliably. And what grew up around those mud buildings had a center of gravity that a row of tents never gets. Then the sun goes down, and the walls do the job they were actually built for. Delia spent years in a tent before this, and anyone who slept in a tent on a city street will tell you the same thing. You don't fully sleep. Part of you stays on duty at the zipper, because fabric opens with a pocket knife. But at Wood Street, there was a second thing you listened for. And it wasn't footsteps, it was smoke. When 100 fires go through a camp, everyone in it develops the same reflex, which is to come half awake at any smell of burning and lie there working out how far away it is and which direction the wind is going. That's not sleep. That's a shift. Now put that same person inside a foot of packed earth, behind a door that closes, in a structure that physically cannot catch. The reflex takes a while to switch off, but it switches off. And when people describe the difference, they didn't reach for anything poetic. They said they finally stopped waking up. That sounds small. It isn't. Try holding down day labor or sitting through a 2-hour benefits appointment or keeping track of a housing wait list on 4 broken hours a night. Every hour of real sleep those walls bought was an hour of somebody's judgment coming back. If this is landing hard for you, there's probably a reason. Maybe money is tighter right now than anyone in your family knows. Maybe you're one repair bill, one diagnosis, or one landlord decision away from the edge yourself. Or maybe somebody you love already went over it. I put together a guide called The Veteran's Blueprint, and I'll be straight about why it exists instead of living in this video. There are things that need more room and more detail than any 20-minute documentary can give them. How to protect a roof over your head when the money starts running out. Which documents to secure first, and how to replace the ones already gone because losing a discharge paper or a birth certificate can cost a person years of their life. What to do in the first 48 hours after an eviction notice arrives, and how to be actually useful to somebody who's already outside instead of worrying about them from a distance. It was written for 3 kinds of people. People close to the edge who can still be pulled back, people who are out there tonight, and people who want to help somebody they love and don't know where to start. The link is the first line of the description. Go get it after this. Now, back under the freeway, because the story of Cobb on Wood does not end the way the news coverage promised. The land under Interstate 880 belongs to the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and a highway agency's mandate does not include housing anybody. In April of 2022, after the fire that killed a resident, the governor toured the site and the state announced the encampment would be closed. Advocates fought it in court and won delays. A federal injunction held things off through the summer. But in September of 2022, the evictions began. Residents described crews arriving around 7 in the morning. Machines went into the self-built houses, the RVs, the tiny homes. Belongings were pulled out and piled up while people wove between the workers grabbing whatever they could carry. Murals that volunteers had spent weekends painting were power washed off the concrete pillars. By the end of that month, a large section of the encampment simply wasn't there anymore. Cobb on Wood itself held on a while longer. A federal judge issued a temporary restraining order in January of 2023, then dissolved it 6 weeks later. His written reasoning was blunt. He said he had no authority to keep people on land the owner didn't want them on because the Constitution does not recognize a right to housing. He also wrote that he understood real hardship was coming and that the time for finger-pointing was over. The site was fully cleared in early May of 2023, and here is the number that matters most. Out of the hundreds of people displaced from Wood Street, 95 accepted an offer of shelter from the city or the county. A handful got apartments through housing vouchers. The rest scattered into other neighborhoods, other underpasses, other people's problems. 3 months later, reporters went looking and found very few of them in permanent housing. The land is slated to become an affordable housing development. This also wasn't one unusual crackdown. In a single fiscal year, that same state agency cleared over 1,200 encampments, and in the following 10 months, it cleared more than 1,500. Then, in June of 2024, the Supreme Court ruled on a case out of Grants Pass, Oregon, and handed cities much wider power to ticket and arrest people for sleeping outside even where no shelter bed exists. Bans and sweeps spread across the West through the rest of that year. So let's be honest about what a Cobb house survives and what it doesn't. It doesn't survive an excavator. Nothing at that price does. It's heavy, it can't be moved on a whim, and in a state that runs on building permits, an owner-built mud structure sits in a legal gray zone most cities have no category for. And the criticism from the other direction is fair too, because it came from people who spend their whole careers on this. A mud hut is not housing. No plumbing, no address, no lease, no security of tenure. Housing advocates worry, with reason, that when the public sees homeless people tucked into charming little earthen cottages, the political pressure to fund actual apartments quietly drains away, and a stopgap becomes the permanent answer. Fire officials worry about anything at all in a camp with no hydrant. City officials worry about liability. To their credit, Oakland's housing staff did start drafting rules that might create a permitting path for alternative structures, which is more than most cities bothered with. Nobody serious, including the builders, called this a solution. They called it a bridge. And the case for a bridge is arithmetic. An affordable housing building in Oakland runs something like 6 years from first drawing to first key. A bad November takes one night. Whatever keeps a person alive, rested, and holding on to their paperwork across that gap is buying time for the real fix to show up. Which brings this back to Delia. She wasn't born into this. Almost nobody is. She worked in Oakland for decades, kept an apartment, and lost it the way a lot of people in that city lost theirs, through a rent increase she couldn't absorb on a fixed income, at an age where nobody's hiring. She went into a tent at 59. She was in tents for years, moved along by police who told her Wood Street was where she should go, until she was one of the people mixing clay with her feet on a tarp under a freeway. For 2 winters, she slept behind a foot of packed earth and stopped waking up at every smell of smoke. She used the shower. She cooked in the kitchen. She went to the Sunday meetings and said what she thought into a microphone. Then the machines came, and she lost that too. But one thing survived. When the last of Wood Street was scraped back to bare dirt, one of the Cobb structures was not demolished. It was lifted, carried several blocks away, and set back down. A hand-shaped house of mud and straw and old warehouse pallets, mixed by volunteers and by the people who lived there, outlasted both the encampment it was built for and the agency that erased it. That's not a happy ending. Delia is somewhere in Oakland tonight, moving between spots. The pizza oven is gone. The free store is gone. The shower is gone. But for 2 winters, several hundred people had hot water, cooked food, and walls that could not burn, built for the price of a used refrigerator by people who decided not to wait for permission. The volunteers have a line about this that I keep coming back to. They can't fix homelessness. They can fix Tuesday night for one person, and then next month for somebody else. And the distance between despair and a plan turns out to be about 18 inches of packed earth and 1 full night of sleep. If any part of this hit close to home, for you or for somebody you love, the Veteran's Blueprint is the first link in the description, and it holds the practical steps I couldn't fit into 20 minutes. Go get it before you close this video because it's the most useful thing I can hand you. And if this is the kind of story you want more of, ordinary people quietly refusing to give up on each other, subscribe. There are far more of them out there than the news will ever bother to tell you.